Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Charles Pellegrin. On November 5th, Donald Trump was re-elected President of the United States. His return to the White House after a 4-year absence will mark a stark shift in many of the policies implemented by outgoing President Joe Biden, including in the area of climate change. Trump has in the past claimed the world doesn't have a global warming problem, despite evidence to the contrary. And in a victory speech, he boasted of America's vast resources of crude oil and natural gas. And despite former environmental lawyer Robert F. Kennedy Jr. joining Trump's campaign, he advised him to avoid energy matters.
Bobby, leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby.
Well, Trump's victory loomed large on the COP29 climate summit, which kicked off just days later in Azerbaijan. Amongst other changes, he's expected to withdraw the United States for a second time from the Paris Agreement, a 2015 pact to reduce carbon emissions and limit rising temperatures. Well, despite the uncertainty over the role of the world's largest economy, climate activists at COP said they were determined to make progress.
While the Trump administration may prioritize fossil fuel interests over climate justice, the world cannot afford to pause or weaken its resolve. COP29 therefore offers a pivotal moment to demonstrate the global solidarity and accountability because polluters transcend any single country or political master.
Well, for more on this topic, I'm joined in the studio here in Paris by Bertrand Badré, founder and managing partner of Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital and former managing director of the World Bank Group. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Charles.
And joining us from Washington is Samantha Gross, director of the Energy Security and Climate Initiative at the Brookings Institution. Thank you so much for being with us as well.
My pleasure.
Samantha, I'll start with you. Can you pinpoint one or two areas of climate policy where we're likely to see the biggest changes from the second Trump administration?
Sure. To start with, you alluded to this in your intro, but President-elect Trump will certainly remove us from the Paris Agreement. He's promised to do this on the campaign trail. He did it last time. I think perhaps even on day 1 or 2, he is likely to remove the United States from the Paris Agreement. This is unfortunate, but it doesn't mean climate progress has to stop. The second thing that I think will happen more on the domestic front is he will work to roll back regulations here in the United States that focus on greenhouse gas emissions. Regulations that I think are particularly in danger would include vehicle efficiency standards, limits on greenhouse gas pollution from power plants, and also limits on methane emissions from oil and gas production. And so these are things we don't want to see, but these I think are likely under the new administration.
I'm going to turn to you now, Bertrand Badré. As a former managing director of the World Bank, what does it mean to have a now known climate skeptic running not just the world's largest economy, but also the world's largest contributor to climate financing projects?
Well, it's a challenge, and it comes not at the right moment. I mean, there were growing doubts on everything connected to sustainability and climate for some months and some years. And precisely at that moment where we have a difficult COP starting in Azerbaijan this week, we have, I mean, as you rightly say, the person coming at the helm of the largest economy being an official climate skeptic, and not only climate skeptic, but pro-fossil fuels. So we have to make a distinction between what Samantha just said. So he will withdraw the US from the Paris Accord. He might, it's more difficult legally, withdraw from the UN Convention on Climate, which is a bigger deal. He might change the regulation in the US. So there are a number of things that he can do. But I think there are different things that we need to take into account. First, it's very interesting to see that the CEO of Exxon, Darren Woods, for instance, say that he didn't want Trump to withdraw from the Paris Accord, and he don't want Trump to move away from IRA. I think so you can be cynical and say, well, he is hedging his bet because he's moving into renewable and he's benefiting from the subsidies put together by the IRA, etc., with also enjoying the benefit of deregulation. But you can also say that he is taking time to consider that there is a shift happening, and even the CEO of Exxon must take account of this. So I wouldn't jump too fast to conclusion as to what the US says. The second consequence is probably more difficult to analyze and quantify, is a bad example. There are a number of people which didn't dare to have a loud voice on these issues, and which will basically feel free to speak up because Trump is speaking up. And that will allow a number of countries in the world to say, oh my God, if these guys don't make a move, why should I make a move? If this guy don't provide finance, why should I provide finance, etc.? So for me, the second part is probably as problematic as the first part, the contagion effect of Trump election on the words and the action of many other leaders.
Samantha, I'd like your opinion on this. This position by Trump can hurt the credibility of meetings like COP29, and it gives license for other countries potentially to not sign on to new pledges.
I agree with everything that Bertrand has said. I think he's exactly right. But I will point out that you see people like the CEO of ExxonMobil coming out and saying, we wish we'd stay in the Paris Agreement and we'd like to see IRA stick around, in part because not only do they benefit from IRA subsidies in parts of their business, but also it's really hard for businesses in the United States to deal with policy that swings very hard from one pole to the other. It makes it a very difficult investment environment for businesses like ExxonMobil. And so I think Trump and many people who voted for him believe that they're good for business and that their deregulatory push is helpful. But actually the level of uncertainty that they bring to the US economy and to long-term investments is very difficult for businesses to navigate. And these businesses understand that the world is going the direction that we're going, and that the Trump administration and its climate denialism is likely going against the flow and not something that's likely to stick around. And so the change in the business environment is actually difficult for them.
Maybe a quick reminder to our viewers, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, a cornerstone of the Biden White House administration, billions of dollars in tax credits and spending to promote clean energy projects in the U.S. Trump has called it the Green New Scam, has promised to repeal it, but it's unclear, as you said. And a lot of these projects are happening in Republican districts and have been well received.
Yes, you are exactly right. And you have seen, even in the last Congress, a number of House members, a couple of dozen, sent a letter to the Republican House Speaker saying, please don't repeal the IRA because these projects are benefiting my districts and my constituents. And so I actually think of all the things that may happen, I think repeal of the IRA is actually highly unlikely because of these benefits that are accruing to Republican voters.
Bertrand Badret, I want to go on another aspect on this IRA question. The EU was especially worried about the IRA when it was put into place, saying that it would make European green projects less competitive. What might Trump and the future in doubt of the IRA mean for Europe's energy transition?
Well, again, as Samantha said, I really doubt that IRA will be completely dismantled. So I wouldn't write this off. I think this will continue in a way or another. There might be some kind of pound of flesh left on the table to show that I've done the job. But I think this will stay in a way or another. I think one of the issues that Europe is facing is that on the one hand, it's moving full speed in the US, might slow down a little bit, but still. On the other hand, China is becoming the green engine of the world with a lot of questions regarding the level of state subsidies, for instance, etc. But still, the big dilemma with China, and Trump has also a very strong China stance, the big dilemma with China, and on the one hand, we are very nervous with their weight and the way they impose their view in the world. On the other hand, they are making the green revolution affordable. I mean, solar panels have become cheap thanks to China. Electric vehicles are cheaper thanks to China, and so on and so forth. So we are also in a difficult position, and Europe is basically stuck between both. We are the most advanced in terms of regulation, but from an industrial perspective, we are a little bit in the middle. And the second point, which for me is important, is that this climate transition will be a success, of course, if Washington moves, if Beijing moves, if Brussels moves, but if the rest of the world is moving. And the rest of the world is making its move conditioned on money being sent. This is what's being discussed in Baku. We have the famous or infamous $100 billion committed 15 years ago, which have been reached with some delay. Now in Baku, people are discussing whether they can put more. And the problem is that the US is by construction, because it's the largest economy, the largest contributor. And it's very unlikely that Trump will boost the US contribution to that. And he will give excuse to a number of countries which unfortunately are also under fiscal stress to not give more. So that might really be the conundrum that we need to address in Baku and probably again next year in Belém, etc. That's really the issue. We need more money in the system. And the fact that the US will be a reluctant payer will not help solve the equation.
Samantha, I'll turn to you for final thoughts, especially regarding the COP29 conference going on. Aside from the shadow cast by Donald Trump, there's also a notable absence of a number of different heads of state. Do you really expect any concrete breakthroughs from this conference?
You know, there's no such thing as an easy COP. And the reason for that is that the process there is very consensus-based. You have to get all of the folks in the room to agree, and that is always extremely difficult to do. And so I think that this was always going to be difficult. What I often look for to happen at these COPs is actually what happens outside the negotiation room and all the side things that are going on. And so I hope to continue to see progress happening with things like the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, which are groups of wealthy countries working with countries like South Africa and Vietnam to transform their energy sectors. It's not a global promise, but the global promises are very hard to get to. And so I think we should look to incremental progress and not get hopelessly frustrated if we don't see what we want out of the central negotiations.
Samantha Gross, you're the director of the Energy Security and Climate Initiative at the Brookings Institution. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And we also had Bertrand Badré with us. Thank you so much. You are the founder and managing partner of Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital. And thank you for being with us. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Thanks to you for watching. If you like the show, you can watch all of our previous episodes on the France 24 app or website. You can also listen on the podcast platform of your choice. In the meantime, stay tuned to France 24.